Hello, this is Sean Dolly. I'm the industry leader for health and life science at Cloudera. And today I want to talk about the most frequently seen use cases in the pharmaceutical industry. And the industry might also be defined more widely as pharmaceuticals, biotech, and crop science. So if you haven't heard of Cloudera, we are widely known as the largest organization that's solely devoted to delivering big data, open source technologies. It's an absolute honor to be in the role I'm in at Cloudera. We recently achieved the milestone of having 100 customers in health and life science that subscribe to our support services and technology. We also have hundreds of health and life science organizations that use free Cloudera software that's downloaded from the internet. We have a wonderful mix of pharmaceutical and biotech customers and doing amazing things with Cloudera, and would love to have you find out more at cloudera.com. So there are other presentations about each of these use cases, and I would love to go into more detail on each and every one of them with you. But for today, I want to go through this list, which is ranked in roughly in order of frequency that we see them. You can see, if you see color well, these are color-coded, and the legend on the right includes the three most common 3 V's of big data. Variety, which means a wide array of different kinds of data sets being merged together, many of them not able to be modeled or stored in a relational table structure or relational database. The second, in green, is velocity. That would be a real-time streaming use case, if you will. And then the last one are use cases where the driver for using big data is the size of the environment. And I'll comment on each one of those as we go through. So the most common use case that we see, you could call genomics, but really omics today is better defined as panomics or multi-omics. We have folks working in proteomics and in genomics, and now beginning to see exposomics. And it's a wonderful, very full set of use cases even within this use case. So in some ways, number 1 is really number 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the definition of this for us in the most common situation is that you will have germline genetic information that's captured in a variant call format file. So some population scale, large cohort set of patients or samples, if you will, that have gone through a process of assembly and alignment and quality control and genotyping, and the data has gotten smaller per patient as you go, and ends up in a file called a VCF file, which is a common format. Those files can be very large, and the volume of doing genomics at the scale we can do it today, due to decreases in cost of sequencing and prevalence of sequencers, makes for a very large data lake, if you will, or a very large database. And it's the size of data we're seeing today, and we will see tomorrow almost exclusively, that can't be done in any kind of cost-effective way or performance way or scale way in a database. And so the industry has resorted to or has come to rely on Hadoop as the main underlying platform for germline or VCF-driven genomics. Most of our customers will be holding, maybe not as much whole genomes, although that's becoming more prevalent, will hold whole exomes. And even when we get into smaller scale, more cell line or transcriptomics, proteomics, things that are more at the expression level, metabolomics, where it's not necessarily a volume-driven use case. We do see a couple of things. One is that we see a variety-driven use case. We see the importance of the Apache open source programming framework, Spark, which has become sort of the lingua franca of R&D development across a number of spaces. And because of the prevalence of Spark, and even those researchers who are using smaller data, their increased reliance on germline for the samples as a reference or annotation data set rather than an insight-driving data set, we'll go back to the volume use case. So if there's some large set of VCF files that are helpful either in a primary or a secondary way, you will often see Hadoop. So we're excited about that. We're very bullish on the insights that can be driven translationally more and more in the kinds of new and different kinds of omics that folks are working with. The second use case, and this might even be the most fastest growing use case, is real-world evidence, and sometimes called real-world informatics or real-world data. But this is usually used for insights driven around epidemiology, safety, surveillance. Now we're seeing some of this come to randomized controlled trials or clinical trials. But real-world evidence is the concept that I'm going to have very large claims or longitudinal data that's rolled up from patient level, and that by accessing these 10 million, 20 million, 100 million patient size databases that have observational data, that I can do studies. And this has been around for some time. What's different today that's driving toward big data is that the kinds of data that are coming out now, number one, and in fact we could probably color this blue for volume, the sizes of the data sets are just very large now. And you can have even single data source, single database, so not creating a large real-world evidence data lake, but just one file or one database might be 5 or 6 or 10 terabytes in size. So you start to push the limit that argues for a Hadoop underpinning or a big data platform. You also see the desire to have many different data sources that are similar, but complementing those with new kinds of information. So EHR information, electronic health record or electronic medical record information, adding device or wearables information, or looking at predictive kind of analytics. So analytics that don't lend themselves well to files or data that's in a table-based structure. So suddenly, if real-world evidence as it progresses is about new types of data science, predictive analytics, patient pathways, so both on the analysis side, where it's easier to work with data that isn't in tables, but also on the volume side and on that variety side of data, you in some ways have a couple of different drivers. It's been absolutely great to work closely with the observational health and data science informatics, the Odyssey group that sponsors, if you will, the OMOP common data model as a driver for real-world evidence, although we see our customers working with other openly available real-world evidence data sets. So just some amazing things, and we're seeing a great adoption within the pharma space. The next one, medical image repository. I think most people would agree that, at least today, and probably increasingly so, Hadoop is the lowest cost per active terabyte or queryable terabyte in the, storage ecosystem or the informatics ecosystem. And as a result, it's a very compelling platform because it's much more accessible than putting something into cold storage. And it's a new kind of idea around how we can store and keep using medical images. And so, among our dozen plus subscription customers, enterprise data hub customers within the pharma space, the amount of medical images that they have globally is very large, and it's a great way to apply metadata management and curation techniques in a new way to storing those and being able to use those. The next one, social media listening, I think is not, we start here to get into the long tail of the use cases where it's a little less common, but we do see it. And for legal reasons, a number of our customers need to and are regulated toward using other more traditional ways of finding adverse events and monitoring adverse events. But we do have organizations looking at ways through third parties or themselves to understand the capabilities needed to listen to those end customers around how they're experiencing using the drugs. And I guess in some ways you could call this could be color green, and you'd call it a velocity use case if you wanted to use it for surveillance and in real time. We often don't see that. But really for us, this is a variety use case. This data comes in formats and text and user-driven content, user-contributed content in forums on the internet where it's very text-based, it's very log file-based, and those are ideal ingest formats or source formats for big data. It's really kind of what big data was built around. So we see that, and I think there's only more to come here as a use case. Another variety use case that we see is sort of understanding where all of the inventory is and the supply chain capabilities of a pharma as a manufacturing company. So distributing these very expensive assets that have a small size footprint lends itself well to sensors and technology. Usually the investments in these kinds of systems is large when they're done by a third party or when they're done by third-party software. Typically, supply chain investments in this community are large, and as a result, it doesn't take too much innovation to be able to decrease existing spend or reallocate existing spend on supply chain informatics to new things that aren't being tried, because we can decrease the cost of driving insights in supply chain performance and supply chain metrics. And this is listed as variety in some cases also because we are aspiring toward or trying to achieve an outside-in approach to knowledge about the supply chain. So we're adding in different kinds of data sets that we now have access to that will provide information about the supply chain. So that outside in is data variety, new data sources, and I guess here as well, if you think about it, you could create a velocity-driven use case with your supply chain ability to look at your inventory. And then one more, it's not listed on the slide, I think is going to become more and more relevant, is looking at when we are creating the drugs, if they're not small molecule, if they're biologics, if we're doing chemistry, and it takes some time to, if you will, cook these drugs up, that we have more and more seen continuous manufacturing processes where we can stream information about those particular substances. And if we can bring that data in real time, and some of our partners have done work with this that's pretty interesting, we can have some good predictive analytics very quickly that will allow us to save large amounts of money and not continue to run and invest in batches that aren't going to be productive. So, and there are a number of others that are sort of in that long tail that we're starting to see innovation around that aren't mentioned here. And then a couple of ones at the end. These are oftentimes happening less in the R&D part of pharma and oftentimes more on the commercial side or the commercial I&T side. And by commercial, I mean the sales and marketing groups. One is that, and we, by the way, have a great relationship with SAS, and just a wonderful company. We've had a relationship with them for a long period of time. What we've seen happen from time to time is that because SAS is ubiquitous for a number of reasons in the pharma industry, that over time some transformation and IT and sort of mundane workloads end up happening in SAS that aren't about statistical analysis or predictive analytics, and those just were put there because they were easier to build or for other reasons. We can take those off. Our CTO, Amr Adwala, often says, not all of your data has to fly first class, or not all of your compute has to fly first class. So Hadoop is more of a coach class solution, and if we can take some of those workloads away from SAS servers or SAS infrastructure, then your SAS that means something and can only be done in SAS can run faster. And it may also enable you to use some of the expenditures or budget that you have for SAS on some of the newer and more innovative SAS technologies. And then the last one, which is also can be very lucrative, is that, and it's around the same premise, is that oftentimes the commercial side will have a very mission-critical data warehouse that runs analytics and works on pricing and commission and a number of different kinds of analytics. And a number of components of those often grow up over time but don't need to and might be slowing down more important analytics, and we can migrate those off and move them from first class back into Coach, into Hadoop. And it actually saves money because you're using less of the premier high cost per terabyte approaches. So happy to provide more information. Just wanted to mention a little bit about me with my contact information at the bottom of the slide. So if you'd like more information about these use cases or others that are even further down the long tail, please reach out to me at the email listed on the slide. Just a little about me. A wonderful opportunity in the late 2000s to become involved in health and life science. I have an ability, and we all do, but I have an ability now to help move the industry forward and make a difference, and would love to do more work with you and inspire you and work with you to see how we can make our fellow humans healthier every single day. So with that, thank you.